Today I'm going to talk about some of the design of biomaterials, especially like prophylactic and therapeutic biomaterials, how one can design and develop for particular medical applications. So my lab at INSTEM, like for past 6 years, we are focused on developing clinical translational research, and we run two programs, like one is biomaterials and chemical biology program. In biomaterials, like what we do is like we develop novel biomaterials and bioengineering concept to improve the efficacy of the existing drugs and eliminate all the side effects that are associated with the existing drugs. But in the chemical biology program, we develop completely discover the new chemical entities as a therapeutics. So in the biomaterials again, like as they suggest, we develop the materials to either for the treatment of diseases or to prevention of the diseases. And the chemical biology program, we focused on developing either small molecular based drugs or the novel biologics based drugs for the treatment. So let's start with discussing about how one can design the therapeutic biomaterials. And we have been like focused on past 6 years to develop these concepts in the novel biomaterials for medical applications. As you know, like inflammation is an inherent part of majority of the diseases, like arthritis, psoriasis, lupus, and so on. But like despite having like a very potent anti-inflammatory agents and immunomodulatory drugs, the effective treatment is like very poor for treatment of all these chronic disorders. The primary reason is the inherent fluctuated nature of the disease, because inflammation is never like comes like onset, like it doesn't have the steady state, right? It's like you have the increased phase of the disease, you have a steady state, you have the remission period and occasional flare-ups and so on. But unfortunately today we do not have any reliable non-invasive diagnostic tests to measure the level of inflammation a patient has, and this differs from patient to patient and time to time. So that makes it impossible for a clinician to prescribe the right doses of the drugs and the right regime of therapy. So we thought like can we develop a concept like the platform concept to treat these inflammatory disorders. But like if you step back and see like almost like 6-7 decades of the drug delivery, there are two major breakthrough concepts have been developed, right? So one is like developing this excipient based delivery system, either like small molecular based or polymer based excipients. One by appropriate selecting the excipients, one can give the single dose which keeps the drug in a therapeutic window for a certain period of time. Then you give the second dose and so on. So that's how your doctor suggests like whether you have to take a pill like once in a day or twice in a day or so on, right? So because if you take the drugs before the appropriate time, then concentration increases higher, it becomes toxic. If you delay your taking the dose, it goes to subtherapeutic level, then you don't have the efficient therapy. So that's why like this way of delivering drugs is very effective for the treatment of acute diseases where you can take the medication for a few days. But the chronic disorders where you have to take medication for a few weeks to a few months, it becomes difficult because we tend to misassess the doses. So overall therapeutic outcome is lower. So to overcome those limitations, late 70s people have come up with sustained drug delivery, where you develop a variety of biomaterials. By single dose administration, it keeps the drug in a therapeutic window for, by having this consistent or sustained drug delivery. So these two methods have revolutionized the way you treat the patients. But unfortunately, if you see the fluctuated disorders like inflammatory disorders, as I mentioned, disease itself is highly fluctuated, right? So either way of delivering these drugs is not effective. So ideal way of delivering drugs is like you should release the drug only when the disease comes. If the disease goes down, you should stop releasing and so on. But since we don't even know, like we don't have methods to measure the level of inflammation, it's impossible to pretune the kinetics of this material to have such release, right? So this is possible only like disease itself decides and controls when to release the drug and how much to release the drug. So that's the overall concept what we have been developing for the past 6 years. And how we do is like first you start with identifying a disease specific biomarker. So this could be a enzyme, cytokine, peptide, protein and so on. And it should not be present in the absence of disease. When the disease comes, you should be able to produce. Now you develop your drug delivery depots, and in the absence of biomarker, they shouldn't release the drug in a non-specific manner. But when you get in contact with the biomarker, that should trigger the release of the drug. And the release drug goes and alleviate the disease, that stop the production of the biomarker, that stop releasing the drug. So in this way, like a disease itself can control how much to release the drug and when to release the drug. So I'll show you how this platform technology could be used for multiple medical applications, like protecting transplanted organs and treatment of inflammatory arthritis and inflammatory bowel disorders and so on. So when you say like organ transplantation, you have two types, right? One is your internal organs or life-saving organs like lung, liver, kidney, heart, so on. The second type is called vascularized composite tissue organ transplantation, where like your entire hand or face or leg can be transplanted. Each these color-coded parts are already being successfully transplanted. That means practically every part of your body could be transplanted. But like VC has serious rejection episodes as well. So today I'll talk about primarily hand transplantation. Now surgery has evolved so much that you can do these microsurgeries very efficiently. People can do this single and double hand transplantations very efficiently, and people can even regain their function post-transplantation, right? Then the question is like, is everything is okay with the patient, these patients, right? Although they can gain the touch and feel and the function, the major problem is like global immunosuppression, because as you know, like our immune system is like a primary defense system. It's designed to fight and identify foreign materials and reject them, right? So in these patients, your immune system becomes your enemy, because like what the transplanted organs is recognized as a foreign material and try to reject it. So that's why these patients have to take immunosuppressant drugs to suppress your immune system, and they have to take every single day throughout their life. So that leads to the complication called global immunosuppression. Their entire immune system gets compromised. Even a simple infection could be very lethal for these patients, right? Because they are immunocompromised. So that's why we need to develop the technology where, without causing this entire global immunosuppression, one can protect the transplanted organs. So then people have started doing these local injections, local drug delivery systems, where you can encapsulate the biomaterial and inject them. But as I mentioned, like your immune activation and associated inflammation is highly fluctuating, right? But on the biomaterial today, these are like irrespective of whether disease is there or not, they release the drug continuously and non-specific manner, and after a certain time it goes to the subtherapeutic level and so on. So ideally you should have the release kinetics, which is mirror image of your disease, right? So the question is how that can be done. And the people have done a lot of work to identify the biomarkers specific to inflammation, and people have shown that proteolytic enzymes such as MMPs and electrolytic enzymes overexpress significantly higher compared to healthy conditions. So then the idea is, if you can develop the systems which can be responsive to these enzymes, could be able to produce this disease responsive drug delivery system. That's the overall concept what we are developing. So our approach is like take this amphiphilic gelator. These are small molecules like lipid-like molecules which can self-assemble together to form nanostructures. And during the self-assembly, it can encapsulate the choice of your drug, in this case immunosuppressants. And the robust enough that they don't release the drug non-specific manner, but when they get exposed to the proteolytic enzymes that are associated with inflammation, can degrade and release the drug in a specific manner. So that's the overall approach what we are taking. The question is what kind of amplifiers one can develop, right? By using organic chemistry, one can design very novel molecules, but if you want to translate in the clinic, we don't know what could be the potential toxicity in the future in the go to the clinic. So that's why we focus on the material, something called GRAS agent. These are generally recognized as safe agents. These have been used in variety of biomedical products and food products and cosmetics and so on, whose safety profile is very well known. So by screening like few hundred of molecules, then we identify like 4 molecules. They have the robust self-assembly nature, and we optimize all the conditions for self-assembly of triglycerol monostearate, which is simple amplifier and also have the inherent ester, which could be used as a proteolytic enzyme responsive manner. Then we selected immunosuppressant drugs like the tacrolimus, which is prescribed drugs for organ transplantation patients, and we optimized conditions to develop these injectable hydrogels which are loaded with tacrolimus. Once we went and tested their ability to release the drug in an enzyme responsive manner. As you can see, in the absence of proteolytic enzymes, it has like 5 to 10% non-specific release, then after that it's stabilized. It doesn't release the drug. Not only a month, but we showed that up to 3 months they don't release the drug. And but in the presence of all the proteolytic enzymes, you can see the responsive manner they can release the drug, right? But again, like these are like a purified and stabilized enzymes. Then we wanted to see a real like inflammatory system also can induce a similar responsive release. So for that, like we took the immunocells, macrophages, and activate with the lipopolysaccharide. And your activated macrophages resembles your inflammatory like conditions, and they produce proteolytic enzymes. Then we wanted to see this in situ generated proteolytic enzymes can do the similar job. So to test that, you take the conditioned media from both activated macrophages and non-activated macrophages exposed to these gels to see the release of the drug. And as you can see, when the gels were exposed to non-activated macrophages conditioned media, the release was similar to the buffer. So that means it doesn't have any induced release. But the gels that were exposed to activated macrophages conditioned media that started degrading and released the drug, not only that, when you give the fresh pulses of this activated conditioned media, you see the dose responsive manner releasing the drug. It's suggesting that inflammatory like conditions can induce the release of the drug. Then we went and tested their ability to protect the transplanted organs, and we did entire limb transplantation from completely mismatched rats, because we have the robust rejection there, from brown Norway rat to Lewis rat. And the post-transplantation, that's how it looks. And after transplantation done, you can take these injectable hydrogels, inject them as a small drug depots under the skin, the subcutaneous depots. Then we measured followed the survival of the graft, right, from rejection. Just to summarize the results, if you focus on this MST, that is median survival time of the transplanted limb. And when you, after the transplantation, if you don't give the treatment or you give only gel without having the drug, within 11 days, 50% of the animals rejected the transplanted organs. But then as a control, you take the only drug and do the local injection without encapsulating into the gel. Again, like in that case, in 33 days, again 50% of the animals rejected the graft. But the same dose of the drug, when you encapsulate within the gel and inject them, this is like post-transplantation, a single gel injection. Even after 100 days, you don't see a rejection of the graft at all, not even a single animal. And we did the long-term studies as well, like with the single injection, up to 200 days, you can protect the graft. And the gold standard in the field today is like 60 days, even with all the side effects. And interestingly, in these animals, you don't see the global immunosuppression and all the drug-associated other organ toxicity and so on. So these are some of the representative images where you can see when you give only gel or only drug, you can see by day 33 severe inflammatory edema formation and also muscle damage and the grade 3 rejection. But whereas when you have the tacrolimus loaded gel, you don't see such rejection episodes at all. Hair grows back, and even animals start gaining its function. It's not able to drag its limb and put the force on it. So which is clearly suggesting that indeed having this enzyme responsive or disease responsive biomaterial able to protect the transplanted graft. But one of the major limitations today is like having this oral or global immunosuppression, which will lead to the inherent like opportunistic infections they develop, right? So we wanted to see whether we can protect that. So you take the two groups of the animals, both of them transplanted. In one group, you do these local injections of the delivery systems, like every 70 days, like 4 times, and terminate the study at 280 days. But the second group, they receive every single day oral medication of this tacrolimus, which resembles the clinical treatment what we have today. And all the animals that receive your oral medication develop the opportunistic infections, whereas when you have this localized enzyme responsive drug delivery system, you didn't see a single animal developing infections, which is clearly suggesting the advantage of having this enzyme responsive biomaterials to protect the transplanted organs. So after showing its efficacy in small animals, we went and tested their ability to protect in larger animals as well, and they showed the similar efficacy. Now we are in the process of setting up the human clinical trials very soon. So with that, like I'll explain the second example where the similar disease responsive or inflammation responsive material, how one can use this for the treatment of inflammatory arthritis. As you know, like arthritis is primarily affects your joints, and today like all the drugs people take like through oral, right? Like because the amount of dosage required to treat at the joints we need much higher. Because of that, like, all these drugs have the plethora of side effects, and their side effects so severe that, drugs like Viax and Bextra was recalled from the market by FDA because of their side effects. So then people have started doing these local injections where you can do this intra-articular injection directly into the joints, but unfortunately it wasn't successful as well, because all the drugs injected there, it diffuses from the site of injection, right? And there are a series of drugs people have tried doing these local injections, but unfortunately, like, the maximum they can stay for a few hours and goes off. And according to protocol, one cannot get like more than 2 injections per year, because we end up damaging the cartilage and so on. So, but like per injection, if it can stay only a couple of hours, it really doesn't have the better therapeutic efficacy. So that's why then people have started, like, encapsulating these drugs, microparticle liposomes and gels and so on, and try to do these intra-articular injections. But again, the same problem, like, because your arthritis inflammation is not steady state, right? It's on and off. And irrespective of this, if it's there or not, like, all this drug delivery system used to have the consistent release and go. So that's why there was no better therapeutic output from this. So that's why we thought, like, having this inflammation response might have much better efficacy. So now here we took the triamcinolone estonic, which is again like a prescribed drug for arthritis, and developed optimized conditions to develop these injectable hydrogels. And we show that again this drug also can be released in an enzyme responsive manner and the inflammation responsive manner. But more importantly, we wanted to see, because it's going to be injected into the intra-articular joints, and where you have the inflamed synovial fluid, then we wanted to see that the arthritis patient's synovial fluid can induce a similar response. So we collected the synovial fluid from arthritis patients as well as healthy volunteers and exposed these gels to see the drug release. As you can see, this yellow line, which is like synovial fluid collected from healthy volunteers, and it doesn't have any induced release, so this is as good as buffer. But like the synovial fluid that was collected from the arthritis patients, you can see that it has like an enhanced release. Not only that, when you give the fresh pulses of this synovial fluid, it has the responsive manner it releases, and which clearly suggesting that indeed inflammatory synovial fluid can induce the release of the drug. And our hypothesis is like having these proteolytic enzymes that are released from inflammation can do the job. So for that, like again, what we did is like we take the synovial fluid from arthritis patient and add the MMP inhibitors to this synovial fluid, then your entire drug delivery goes down, which is clearly suggesting that inflammation that is present in the synovial fluid is indeed will respond to the drug release. And another critical parameter to evaluate is like if there is no inflammation, do they stay there and like localize your entire drug and doesn't disintegrate to release non-specific manner? So to test that, you take the animals, and these are like a dye-encapsulated gels. So you inject intra-articular injections you can do, and even after 2 weeks you don't see the dispersion of the drug or the dye, and it's remain localized in the joints. But then one can induce the mild arthritis by injecting a serum around 37 microliters. This is KBXM serum, which is known to induce mild arthritis from day 8 onwards. And as you can see, like after day 6 or day 8, you can see slow depletion of the signal, which is suggesting that whenever you get the mild arthritis, you can start induce the release. But what we can do is we can double the dose of this KBXM serum, then which induces the severe arthritis from day 2 onwards. So when we do that, again, like you can see, like after 2 days and from 4th day onwards, you get rapid dissolution of these gels to release the drug. So which is clearly suggesting that if the absence of inflammation, these enzymes can be localized in the site of injection, but whenever the inflammation comes, that can induce the release of the drug in a on-demand manner. So once we showed that, we went and tested their overall therapeutic outcome. So again, after inducing the arthritis by serum injection, either only drug directly was injected or encapsulated the same dose of the drug encapsulated into these gels and injected. And if you measure overall therapeutic output, one way of measuring is the swelling of the pulp. You can measure the thickness of the pulp. The lower is the better therapeutic output. As you can see, much lower swelling you can see when you have the drug encapsulated in these gels. But whereas the same dose of free drug did not have the effective therapy. And when you do the clinical score as well, the total overall inflammation score, again you see the similar trend. So which is clearly suggesting that having this inflammation responsive material, one can have the much better therapeutic outcome when you do the local delivery of these gels. So that brings to the third example where not only inflammation responsive, but like we added another layer of the design where the inflammation targeting material for the treatment of inflammatory bowel disorders. As you know, like IBD, like it comes in two variants, Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. It primarily affects your large and small intestines in a localized manner. But today there are no way to target drugs only at the site of inflammation, right? Like whatever drug you take, your healthy mucous, healthy tissue also give the same dose of the drug. That leads to severe side effects. That's why drugs was recalled from the market. So ideal way of treating these drugs would be like having a material which can survive in the GI tract but does not interact with the healthy tissue, but it goes and specifically adhere to the site of inflammation, right? So in that manner, like only drugs can release only at the site of inflammation tissue, but a healthy tissue doesn't release or doesn't expose to the drugs. So in that way, we can minimize the side effects and increase the efficacy of the therapy. But the question is how one can induce that specific adherence in a targeted manner. So if you see the site of inflammation as a defense mechanism, our body try to produce this high concentration of antibacterial peptides and bactericidal proteins, and all of them cationic in nature, right? So because of that, whenever you have the inflammation tissue, it's like a cationic charged bed compared to your healthy mucus, which is primarily negatively sulfate charged. So we thought like by using a simple ionic interactions like Coulombic interactions, can be able to target and induce the specific adherence by using this positive and negative sulfate charge as a tool. So that's the overall concept we want to try to explore. For that, again, like we focus on self-assembly of small molecules which can self-assemble and to form these microfibers. But this amplifier should render the negative sulfate charge to the overall particles. And here we selected the dexamethasone, which is again prescribed drug for IBD. And again, like they don't release the drug in the absence of enzyme, but when in response to proteolytic enzyme, they should be able to release the drug. The amplifier that was selected was the ascorbyl palmitate, and it not only has the robust self-assembly nature, but it also gives the partial negative sulfate charge. So overall particles can have the negative sulfate charge. As you shown here, either only microfiber self-assembled fibers, or in the presence of various dyes and drugs, we could see like high negative sulfate charge of these fibers, which means they might be able to bind to the cationic surfaces. So again, we showed that like these materials also have the inflammation responsive drug delivery ability. But more importantly, we wanted to see whether these fibers can bind to the proteins that are overexpressed at the site of inflammation. So transferrin overexpressed at the site of inflammation, and that protein was coated, and mucin is found at the healthy mucus. So after coating these surfaces, then you take the dye encapsulated fibers and incubate it with these plates and wash them and measure the amount of fiber they stick to them. And as you can see, like there's no surprise, right? Like when you have the cationic proteins, then they're able to bind to this negatively sulfate charged particles. But the real challenge comes whether can that be done in a live animals, right? So to test that, like you take the normal animal, like which doesn't have any inflamed tissue, but like expose them to dextran sodium sulfate for a week, and they develop all IBDs, colitis, where their colon gets inflamed. Now you take the fibers, this dye-encapsulated fibers, and administer them, and after 24 hours, surgically remove the colon and measure how much amount of fibers are binding there, right? As you can see here, in the healthy animals, they don't have any inflamed tissue, so even by 24 hours, we don't see a traces of any of these fibers. That means because since you have the high bowel movement, within 24 hours, these fibers might have completely excreted. But when you have the arthritis IBD, where you can see the large amount of fibers, they are able to stick there and adhere there, because despite having this high bowel movement, even after 24 hours, they remain there. So which is clearly suggesting that this material has the ability to go and specifically adhere to only site of inflammation and remain there, and they release the drug, right? So again, like we did entire pharmacokinetics and so on, but like this is just to conclude, to see like of the overall therapeutic outcome whether we can get it. So what we have done again, like after inducing the colitis, either these drugs were directly administered or encapsulated within this targeted material and given. And if you see the overall clinical score is much lower, that means much better therapeutic outcome when you encapsulate within this targeting gel fibers compared to the free drug administration. And we also tested the non-specific toxicity, like you take the healthy mucus. When you directly inject the drug, your healthy mucus also gets affected, but whereas when you targeted manner, you don't see such non-specific toxicity. So which is again clearly suggesting that having this ability to selectively bind to the inflamed tissue. But although we have shown that like this can bind to your mice tissue, but can we translate that into human tissue as well? So whether these particles have the ability to bind to human ulcerated tissue as well. So to test that, we collected the tissue biopsies from the patients, IBD patients. From the same patients, you collect the tissue from their site of inflammation and also a healthy tissue from the same patient. And ex vivo, you incubate these fibers and watch them to see how much specific adherence this material has. As you can see, the inflamed tissue has much higher adherence compared to the same person's healthy tissue. If you do the individual patient specific manner, for example, if this patient has X amount of adherence to the normal tissue, and the same patients, like when you have the inflamed tissue, the adherence goes very high. And the same trend we have observed for every single patient we have tested. So which is clearly suggesting that indeed this material has the potential to specifically target and adhere to the site of inflammation, which can have the targeted manner have the much better therapeutic outcome. So these all three comes into the therapeutic biomaterials. Now let's go and discuss about the prophylactic biomaterials where we can use this material to prevent the diseases, right? And specifically we'll discuss about the prophylactic technology to protect farmers from pesticide-induced toxicity. Because as you know, all the pesticides they are neurotoxins, they are designed to kill pests, right? Typically, like if you see, we have acetylcholinesterase which plays pivotal role in neuromuscular functions by modulating the concentration of acetylcholine at the synapse junction, right? And this pesticide, they are neurotoxin, they are designed to go and bind to this acetylcholinesterase in an irreversible manner and inhibit enzyme activity. So a quantitative inhibition of ACHE leads to severe toxicity and paralysis and subsequently death. That's how pests die, right? But unfortunately, these pesticide molecules, they don't discriminate between pest and human. When same compounds get exposed to human, they have similar side effects, right? For example, if you see farmers in India and any developing countries, they spray pesticides by using these motor pumps in a manual manner without having any protective gear and so on. And it's like walking under the poisonous trail, right? And they get severely exposed through dermal and inhalation, completely false. And all this material has high skin penetration power and so on. So we thought of developing this technology to protect and prevent the exposure through dermal route. But we wanted to understand like what kind of pesticides they use, what kind of technology they use to prevent themselves, like if there are any present. So to test that, we went and interacted with almost like 200 plus farmers in 60 villages in Telangana to see like what kind of acute toxicity they have. So earlier we used to think that people get exposed for a period of like years and then they start showing the symptoms, but it was completely opposite in the reality because they have severe acute toxicity. The day they spray it from the same evening, they start having the side effects. So they have vomitings, high fever, breathing disorders, and tremors when you have high concentrations and so on. So just to give an example, in like a few months span in 2017, like there are almost 60 people have died and thousands of farmers hospitalized in one district in Maharashtra while exposing to this pesticide during the spraying in cotton field. That shows the level of problem that exists, and it also suggests that there is absolutely no technology there to protect them. So that's why we decided to develop some of the technology to prevent these pesticides. As I showed, like all the organophosphate pesticides, they have like high skin penetration power. They can go through the skin and inhibit this ACH enzyme. So our idea is to develop a topical skin gel this is like a chemical scissors, like, a polymer should retain there and chemically, break down the pesticides into non-harmful products which can no longer go and inhibit these enzymes. That's the overall approach. And if you see, like, all the organophosphate pesticides, they have the common structure. These all are activated organophosphate esters. They have a very good living group. That's how they are super reactive. They can go and bind to the acetylcholinesterase. So our idea is, can we use a simple nucleophile mediated hydrolysis to break down this pesticide before they enter into the skin. So to design the nucleophile, like we have focused on the class of nucleophile called alpha nucleophiles, because when you have the alpha atom, a free lone pair electron, nucleophilicity goes way high. Based on this, people have developed variety classes of nucleophiles like oximes, hydroxylic acids, and so on. We focused on oximes, and one such nucleophile design was pyridine oxime, and which can be attached to any polymer surface, and when you put it on surface of the skin, that can deactivate the pesticide, but also regenerate itself, so that catalytic manner it can keep deactivating any pesticide that comes into contact. So this is a simple synthetic route, like you take the pyridine oxime, quaternize and attach to the phytosine polymer, and by using hemoctants one can develop this topical gel. And as a control, like you take the same just cytosine and make the gel, which doesn't have the ability to chemically deactivate these pesticides. Once we have that, we went and tested their ability to prevent the pesticide-induced acetylcholinesterase inhibition by using this transdiffusion experiment, where you can have the donor and acceptor chambers separated by a thin membrane, and you can keep your rat blood here, which contains your ACHE enzyme, and exposed to the pesticide from the top chamber, and here on the membrane you can either directly expose, or you can keep your active gel or the sham gels. And when you measure the enzyme inhibition rate here, if you see, like in the absence of any pesticide, this enzyme has 100% activity. But when you expose to the pesticide, either directly or in the presence of control gel, you can see significant drop of enzyme activity. But when you have polyoxime gel, you don't see such inhibition of the activity, which is clearly suggesting that the gel doesn't act as a physical barrier, but rather it chemically deactivates to prevent the pesticide-induced ACHE inhibition. So after showing the ex vivo inhibition, we went and tested their ability to prevent the in vivo exposure as well. For that, like 3 group of animals, they received pesticide either directly, dermal spray, or in the presence of control gel or active gel. After exposure, 4 days, like you collect the blood and measure the enzyme activity. As you can see, when they expose directly or in the presence of control gel, a significant drop of enzyme activity was observed compared to before exposure. But whereas in the presence of your polyoxime gel, it doesn't, which is clearly suggesting this ability to protect or prevent the pesticide exposure. But not only in the blood, we went and tested in the tissue as well. For example, if you see in the brain, again you see the similar trend. When you have the polyoxime gel, completely protects compared to when directly exposed or in the presence of control gel. And the similar trend you observe for every single organ that was tested in vivo. And not only that, like when get exposed, all these farmers, the same day they see like they go through a hypothermic reaction, so their body temperature lowers down and they start shivering. So we wanted to see whether we can protect similar effects. As you can see, when directly exposed, their animal's body temperature significantly drops, almost 5 degrees. But whereas we can completely prevent such loss of body temperature by using this material. Then, as you know, like again, these farmers, they keep getting exposed over and over. So we wanted to see whether a repeated dose-induced lethality can be prevented. For that, like these animals were received every single day, like for 4 days, 100 per kg per day dose, and either directly or in the presence of control and active gels. But when you have gels, every single day before spraying the pesticide, you apply a fresh layer of the gel. And when you measure see the survival, where you can see the animals that received either directly or in the presence of control gel, all animals died within 6 days. But whereas the animals that received in the presence of polyoxime gel, we didn't see any loss of life, then 100% survival we can see. And not only that, like if you measure the again enzyme inhibition, you can clearly see the trend of protection ability of this polyaxial gel, right? So that clearly suggests that indeed the gel does not act as a physical barrier, rather it can chemically deactivate the pesticides before they enter into the body. But like if you see the field, like these farmers, they get like variable exposure, right? Because somebody sprays like a 1 hour, somebody can spray multiple hours. Then how often they should be able to apply this, right? That's the question. Then we wanted to see if you have a thin layer of gel, will it be able to protect you, for entire day, right? Because this act as a catalytic manner rather than stoichiometric manner. So for that, again, like two group of animals exposed to this repeated dose of pesticides. But here, instead of applying gel every single day, only the day one, like you apply one single layer of this gel, and from the same gel, like you keep exposing the pesticide like over and over for 4 days. And if you measure the survival, again, like when you expose in the presence of control gels, you can see all the animals die within 6 days. But like whereas when you have the even single application of this polyaxial gel completely protects and gives 100% survival rate. It's clearly suggesting that this gel has a robust way of deactivating pesticides in a catalytic manner and protect them. So then we wanted to see, like, because as I mentioned, ACHE plays pivotal role in your neuromuscular functions. So that's why when these farmers get exposed, their entire locomotor coordination goes off, their endurance goes off, so they will not be able to do any physical activity. So entire productivity goes down. So we wanted to see whether we can prevent such loss of endurance. So for that, like you can do this rotor rod experiment where animals can get trained on running on this rotor rod, and you measure them how long they can run, and based on that you can measure their endurance. And after training for 4 days, that like you consider that as 100%. And now two group of animals get exposed to pesticide either directly or in the presence of polyaxial gel, and third group they never see the pesticide. Now again you go on and measure their endurance, and as you can see, at the after training period, if you directly expose them, their entire endurance drops down significantly. But the same dose exposure in the presence of polyaxial gel completely prevented such loss of endurance, and that is as good as the animals they never got exposed, which is clearly suggesting the effect of the gel. And again, more importantly, like when this pesticide enters into the body, they completely damages your internal neuronal system. So one way to quantify this neuronal damage is like measuring the damage of sciatic nerve. Sciatic nerve controls your entire limb movements and your feet movements. So one way to measure this is like you take the animals and color code their palms and make them walk on this sheet, and then you can measure the distance between their toes when they take the steps, and also the angle they take and the pressure they put it. And putting all these numbers in an equation, one can measure something called sciatic functional index, SFI. So typically any healthy animal, like without having any neuronal damage, this number always comes between like a +11 to -11. So if number goes down anything below -20 or -25, considered as a severe damage of the sciatic nerve. So when the animals were taken and first you measured that all of them are like, they are healthy. When you expose to these animals, like you can see a drop of SFI and as low as -60, which is clearly suggesting the severe damage of sciatic nerve. But same dose of exposure when you do in the presence of polyaxial gel, that is like as good as your healthy animal. So which is clearly suggesting that indeed this gel has the ability to decontaminate or degrade pesticide before entering into the body to protect neuronal induced toxicity. And another important factor is, as I mentioned, like when ACHE, like it controls the neurotransmitter at the synapse ends, right? If you inhibit this enzyme, it leads to the accumulation of acetylcholine at the synapse that leads to the completely involuntary movements, involuntary signal. So wanted to quantify that. For example, this is a healthy person who never got exposed to the pesticides. You can measure the, your neuronal signal between these two electrodes. It's like, there is absolutely no signal, right? Because it's physically it's not moving any, there is no direct signal from the brain. But the same way, if you measure for a farmer who got exposed to the pesticides, again you can see the rapid signal firing. Again, like this is not the direct signal because he's not moving his hand, right? So this is completely involuntary signal. That's why like when they get exposed, they have this severe uncontrolled muscle movement and tremors and convulsions and so on. So we wanted to see whether we can prevent such involuntary signaling movement at the synapse junction. So for that, we take the animals, you can keep them under anesthesia and measure the signal between the hind limb and biceps femoris. As you can see in the naive animals, because they are not moving, so you don't see any signaling. But when you expose to the pesticide, you can see, although there is no voluntary movement, you can see the rapid signals are firing. So which clearly suggesting that they have the accumulation of acetylcholine at the synapse junction. That's why you have this rapid movement. But same exposure, same dose of exposure in the presence of polyex completely prevented that. So not only when they are in anesthesia, you can do the same thing when the animals are alive or like awakened. But in this case, when they get exposed to the pesticide, it also induces stress. So they have rapid movement of like voluntary and involuntary movement. That's why it's like a completely firing of the signals you can see. But same dose exposure when they are awake, again in the presence of polyex completely prevents that, which is clearly suggesting the robustness of this gel to protect from any pesticide-induced any toxicity. So after that, like we went and started optimizing formulations for human. Like now we've just completed all the preclinical toxicity according to GLP conditions and so on. Because our aim is to protect every single farmer from India and developing countries from all this pesticide-induced toxicity. So with that, like I would like to summarize our entire work. Like see, like overall, by using in therapeutic biomaterials, we could be able to develop this inflammation responsive materials and inflammation targeting materials, which could be used for protecting transplanted organs and efficient treatment in inflammatory arthritis and IBDs. And in the prophylactic biomaterials, we could be able to show that like having this topical hydrogel cell completely can protect from pesticide-induced toxicity. And today I didn't talk, but like one of the things is like all the gel can prevent from skin exposure, but like they can also inhale. So we have developed an active cloth which can be used as a protective gown and also as a mask. And we are able to show that it's completely prevent from inhalation route also of the exposure of these pesticides. And today I didn't have a chance to talk about the chemical biology program, but recently we have developed the small molecular based drugs for the efficient treatment of inflammatory bowel disorders. Maybe sometime later we can discuss about it. But our lab is not only interested in developing technology, but like we also actively participate in translating this technology to further. So to take them into clinic, based on all the therapeutic biomaterial platform technology, we formed a startup in Boston, which is like a 3-year-old company now. We have done all the preclinical tox studies and completed all the safety studies. It's one of the fast growing company, like we just valuated like more than 700 crores. And not only that, we just, one of the big pharma, Purdue Pharma made like 2,000 crores deal to take this further for IBD treatment. We are in the process of filing IND now. And based on the prophylactic biomaterials, we formed a startup company like a few months back in Bangalore. And that's also, we just completed all the human formulation based preclinical toxicity and safety studies. Now we already initiated the protocol for conducting the human trials. So hopefully by 2019 this year we will conclude that. And a similar manner for the small molecular based drug also, we formed another company in Boston, and where we raised the money for all to file the IND. And but that is going to be a little longer path. So we are expecting by 2021 we will be able to go to the clinic. So with that, I'd like to stop here and acknowledge the group of people who did this wonderful work. These are the PhDs and postdocs and JRFs in the lab. And along with that, like all our clinical collaborators from Brigham and University Hospital of Bern. And I would like to thank DVT, DSC, University and for funding. And thank you all for your kind attention.